Today we're aboard a lavish cruise ship gliding through the pristine waters of the Caribbean. What began as an exciting escape soon turned into a harrowing disaster. For one couple, the fantasies they hoped to explore ended in tragedy, leaving a man dead and his wife fleeing. Derek Orville, 45, was a prominent and successful realtor from Mankato, Minnesota, a place better known for its cornfields and traditional values than for the kind of excitement Derek secretly desired. On the surface, Derek appeared to be the picture of a charming, outgoing man who seemed to have everything. Derek's confidence and charisma made him well-liked in his community, and his real estate business was booming. He had a reputation for loving adventure and excitement, always eager to propose a bold activity or a trip to an exotic location. His passion for thrills, including those of a more intimate nature, spilled over into his personal life, where he constantly sought out experiences that challenged the norm. Derek's craving for excitement drove him and his wife Janice to book an adults-only cruise through the Caribbean in April 2015. Marketed as an exotic escape for couples looking to rekindle their relationships, the cruise promised a week filled with sun, sea, and forbidden pleasures. Derek saw it as the ideal chance to delve into the more adventurous aspects of his desires. Despite his adventurous spirit, Derek's life had its shadows. Friends noted that he could be controlling, especially in his relationships. This side of Derek had become more apparent in recent years, putting a strain on his marriage to Janice, a quiet and somewhat submissive woman. Derek was determined to reignite the spark in their relationship through unconventional sexual practices like swinging and wife-swapping, convinced that this cruise might be the solution to their marital issues. In the days before they left, Derek pressured Janice to join him, believing that this trip would draw them closer. He painted a picture of excitement and intimacy, hoping it would revive the passion in their marriage. But beneath Derek's confident exterior, he was oblivious to the turmoil brewing within his marriage. As the cruise neared, his mind was consumed with visions of excitement and passion. He was eager to embrace the experience, never suspecting that it would be the final adventure of his life. On the morning of April 14, 2015, around 9 a.m., a housekeeper aboard the luxurious cruise ship made a horrifying discovery. Luisa Palacio Ortiz, a 32-year-old woman from San Juan, Puerto Rico, had been working on the ship for nearly 5 years. As she followed her usual routine, cleaning cabins while most passengers were at breakfast, she reached cabin 827, the suite assigned to Derek and Janice Orville. When Luisa knocked on the door and got no response, she assumed the couple was out for the day. Using her master key, she entered the room to start her cleaning. Almost instantly, Luisa sensed that something was terribly wrong. The room was unsettlingly quiet, with a heavy, strange odor in the air. As Luisa moved further inside, her eyes were drawn to the bed, where she saw Derek Orville's lifeless body. He was naked, lying face down on the bed, with his mouth gagged and his hands bound to the bedpost with metal chains. A pillow was tightly pressed over Derek's face, and there were no signs of movement. Stunned, Luisa froze for a moment, struggling to comprehend the scene before her. Her heart pounded, and she was overcome with a wave of nausea. Years of working on the ship had taught Luisa to stay calm in emergencies. She quickly stepped back from the room, her screams echoing down the hallway as she ran to the nearest phone. There, she dialed the ship's emergency number and reported the grim discovery. Within minutes, ship security arrived, sealing off the area to keep passengers away. Luisa, clearly shaken, was taken to a private area where she was provided with water and comforted by a fellow crew member. She later told investigators that she had never encountered anything like this before and hoped never to again. The discovery of Derek's body sent shockwaves through the ship. News spread rapidly among the passengers, who had been enjoying a sunny day at sea, oblivious to the unfolding tragedy. Many huddled in small groups, whispering about the incident, while the ship's crew and authorities prepared to manage the situation. Within an hour of the discovery, Captain Mark Reynolds had contacted local authorities at the nearest port, St. Thomas in the U.S. Virgin Islands. By 10:30 a.m. on April 14, 2015, a team of detectives from the Virgin Islands Police Department, led by the experienced Detective Samuel Torres, boarded the cruise ship. Known for his keen instincts and methodical approach, Torres was accompanied by a forensic specialist and her assistant. The team acted swiftly to secure the crime scene, taking care to avoid contaminating any evidence. When Detective Torres entered cabin 827, he was struck by the stark contrast between the room's luxury and the brutality of the crime. The cabin, with its plush bedding, elegant furniture, and ocean views, was immaculately clean, amplifying the horror of the scene. The room was unnervingly clean, with the heavy scent of cleaning products lingering in the air, suggesting the scene had been deliberately sanitized. Derek Orville's naked body lay undisturbed on the bed, still bound with metal chains and gagged with a ball, a pillow pressed tightly against his face. There were no signs of a struggle, no blood, and no obvious fingerprints, suggesting the killer had meticulously covered their tracks. The medical examiner promptly began her examination, noting the ligature marks on Derek's wrists and ankles. The heavy, industrial-looking chains, not typically found on a cruise ship, raised suspicions that they had been brought on specifically for this purpose, possibly related to a sexual motive. The medical examiner also noted that Derek's lips were tinged blue, indicating suffocation. The estimated time of death was around 2 a.m., based on the body's rigidity and temperature. Meanwhile, Detective Torres carefully searched the room for any additional clues. They used luminol to check for traces of blood, but the tests came back negative, reinforcing the theory that the scene had been meticulously cleaned. Detective Torres also ordered a thorough sweep of the cabin for any hair, fibers, or other forensic evidence that might have been missed. The detectives were left puzzled by the absence of clear evidence pointing to a suspect. Everything about the scene indicated a premeditated, calculated murder by someone familiar with Derek's preferences and tendencies. As the investigation unfolded, both crew and passengers were interviewed. Ship logs were reviewed to trace anyone who might have entered or exited the cabin during the night, but the initial search produced few leads, leaving the detectives with more questions than answers. The team recognized they were dealing with a highly skilled and potentially cold-blooded killer. Detective Samuel Torres initially focused on Janice Orville, Derek's wife of 20 years. Janice, 45, was a quiet, unassuming librarian from Mankato, Minnesota. Janice had always been the opposite of her outgoing husband. While Derek was adventurous and charismatic, Janice was reserved and timid. Her friends described her as kind but somewhat overshadowed by Derek's larger-than-life personality. Janice had spent most of her life supporting Derek's ambitions, including his desire to explore sexual experimentation on the adults-only cruise. When Detective Torres questioned her on the afternoon of April 14th, she appeared visibly shaken, her hands trembling as she clutched a tissue. Although cooperative, her demeanor suggested she was a woman who had been pushed to the edge. As she recounted the events of the previous night, her voice was soft, barely above a whisper. She told Torres that Derek had been thrilled about the cruise, especially eager to explore their sexual relationship in new ways, something that had always made her uncomfortable. Janice admitted she had reluctantly agreed to participate in Derek's wife-swapping fantasy, hoping it would meet her husband's growing and more adventurous sexual desires. As the days passed, Janice, who had already been feeling unsettled, grew more uneasy with her husband's unusual desires. Having never even seen the ocean before, the entire experience was overwhelming. Derek's relentless push for strange and uncomfortable sexual encounters made her feel trapped and deeply uncomfortable. The night before Derek's death, the tension between them escalated into an argument in their cabin. Janice explained to Torres that Derek had pressured her to engage in a sexual encounter with Marina Davis-Lockley, one of the other participants in the wife-swapping arrangement, while he observed. When Janice refused, it led to a fierce argument. She confessed to feeling both enraged and humiliated, but she maintained that she left the cabin to clear her head. She spent the night walking around the ship's deck, gazing out at the ocean, and praying for the strength to endure the situation. Torres questioned Janice closely about the argument, seeking to understand if her anger could have escalated to the point of killing Derek. Yet Janice stayed calm and collected, showing no hints of the fury that might have fueled such a violent act. Though clearly uneasy, Janice firmly insisted that she would never have hurt Derek, the man she had loved for so long. The detectives observed her behavior, but they couldn't dismiss the possible motive, a mix of fear, resentment, and desperation that kept Janice at the top of their suspect list. The other main suspect in Derek Orville's murder was Brian Davis, a 47-year-old investment banker from Long Island, New York. Brian embodied everything Derek admired: success, confidence, and charisma, with a well-known reputation as a ladies' man. Brian had been married for 10 years to Marina Davis-Lockley, a calm and composed British yoga instructor, But their marriage was far from conventional. They were in an open relationship, a detail they were candid about, especially on this adults-only cruise. For Brian, the wife-swapping arrangement began as a thrill-seeking experience, something that aligned with his adventurous nature. Friends often described Brian as a smooth talker, capable of persuading just about anyone to do almost anything. On the cruise, he quickly connected with Derek, who shared his interest in exploring sexual boundaries. The two hit it off right away, and by the third day of the trip, they had agreed to swap wives. However, it wasn't just Derek's wife, Janice, who piqued Brian's interest. Brian found himself drawn to Derek as well, intrigued by the power dynamics Derek liked to enforce. The two often snuck away to the nearest bathroom to engage in secret encounters. When Detective Samuel Torres brought Brian in for questioning, he was dressed casually in a polo shirt and khaki shorts, looking more like someone ready for a day of golf than a potential murder suspect. Brian appeared relaxed, almost suspiciously so, as he spoke with Torres. He openly admitted that he and Derek had grown close, even becoming sexual partners. However, he firmly denied having any role in Derek's death. Brian stated that he last saw Derek the night before, during a tense confrontation where Derek had insisted that Brian and Marina engage in a sexual act with Janice while he watched. Brian, who described himself as someone who hates conflict, said the situation became too uncomfortable, prompting him and Marina to leave the cabin and return to their own room for the night. Throughout the questioning, Torres observed that Brian's calm demeanor remained unchanged, even as the interrogation grew more intense. Brian spoke with confidence, delivering his answers quickly and directly. He admitted that the wife-swapping experience with Janice and Derek hadn't gone as he had anticipated, noting that tension between the couples had increased over the week. Despite the awkwardness, he insisted he had no motive to kill Derek. Brian's alibi, which placed him and Marina together in their cabin for the night, was backed up by key card records. However, Torres couldn't shake the suspicion that Brian was concealing something. The motive seemed evident: jealousy, desire, and a craving for control. Brian's attraction to both Derek and Janice, combined with the potential for a love triangle to turn deadly, made him a leading suspect. Without concrete evidence, Torres knew he needed more to link Brian directly to the murder. The investigation took a crucial turn on April 16, 2015, 2 days after Derek Orville's body was found. The morning was gray and drizzly, causing the deck of the cruise ship to be slippery. Detective Samuel Torres was becoming increasingly frustrated. Despite thorough interrogations and an exhaustive search of Derek's cabin, the team had yet to find any conclusive evidence identifying the killer. The crime scene was spotless, and the few witnesses were either too intoxicated or preoccupied with their own concerns to offer any valuable insights. That morning, new evidence emerged that shifted the investigation's direction. Kaloy Mendez, a maintenance worker cleaning the ship's storage rooms, discovered a small, nondescript digital camera hidden behind some cleaning supplies. The camera seemed out of place, and its memory card was missing. Kaloy, having heard about the murder on the ship, promptly handed the camera over to the ship's security team. They then passed it on to Torres and his team. The camera was a basic, handheld model, the sort anyone might use on vacation. The camera was slightly scuffed, indicating it had been hastily discarded. Torres hoped it might hold valuable information, so he sent it to the forensic lab on board the ship for analysis. Within a few hours, technicians managed to recover several deleted files from the camera's internal memory. What they uncovered was startling. The recovered footage displayed multiple sexual encounters between the two couples involved in the wife-swapping arrangement: Derek and Janice Orville, and Brian and Marina Davis. The videos, recorded without Janice's knowledge, exposed her growing discomfort and tension, especially during the final night of Derek's life. One of the most unsettling clips captured a heated argument between Derek and Janice in their cabin. Derek, visibly enraged, was coercing Janice into participating in a sexual act with Marina while he watched. Janice, seen crying and begging Derek to stop, was met with his refusal. The video ended abruptly, but it was evident that Janice had been pushed to her emotional breaking point. This new evidence shed significant light on what might have transpired that night, offering Torres a clearer view of Janice's mental state in the hours leading up to the murder. The footage, along with Janice's earlier testimony, indicated that her fear and desperation had likely reached a breaking point, potentially leading to Derek's death. Torres now had a plausible motive but still needed to verify if Janice had indeed committed the murder. The third suspect in the investigation was Marina Davis Lockley, a 39-year-old yoga instructor from Stoke-on-Trent, England. Marina was known for her serene demeanor and spiritual perspective on life. She had met her husband, Brian Davis, 10 years earlier, while teaching a yoga class in New York City. Despite their contrasting personalities, Marina being quiet and introspective, and Brian being outgoing and ambitious, the couple appeared to complement each other well. Their open marriage often sparked curiosity and occasional judgment from those around them. Marina had been initially hesitant about the wife-swapping arrangement proposed by Brian and Derek. Less adventurous than her husband, she felt uneasy about the idea but agreed to it, hoping to maintain the strength of their marriage. As the cruise continued, Marina grew more uncomfortable with the sexual dynamics between the two couples. Derek's domineering behavior, especially his attempts to control the situation, conflicted with Marina's preference for peace and balance. She began to distance herself from the provocative activities, often retreating to the ship's yoga classes or spending time alone on the deck, gazing out at the vast Caribbean Sea. Detective Samuel Torres brought Marina in for questioning following the discovery of the unsettling footage from her camera. The videos clearly depicted Marina's discomfort during the sexual encounters, prompting Torres to seek a deeper understanding of her state of mind. Though Marina maintained a calm demeanor, there was a noticeable tension in her eyes. Torres started by questioning Marina about her relationship with Derek and Janice. Marina admitted that she felt sympathy for Janice, who appeared to be overwhelmed by Derek's controlling behavior. She also expressed regret for agreeing to the wife-swapping arrangement, acknowledging that it had only caused her stress and anxiety. Marina admitted to recording the videos, explaining that she had done so for practical reasons. She revealed that she planned to sell the footage to an adult film company, as she and Brian were facing severe financial difficulties. When Torres questioned her about the night of Derek's murder, Marina's calm demeanor began to falter. Marina admitted that she had left Derek and Janice's cabin early, unable to tolerate the situation any longer. However, she denied any involvement in Derek's death. Torres observed that while Marina's responses were controlled, they were also marked by a quiet determination. Marina appeared genuinely saddened by Derek's death, yet also relieved that the ordeal was over. Despite her calm demeanor, Torres couldn't shake the suspicion that Marina's desire to protect Janice might have led her to take extreme measures. The possibility that Marina acted out of a protective instinct, coupled with her own discomfort, made her a serious suspect. Without concrete evidence directly linking Marina to the crime, Torres knew he needed to investigate further to uncover the truth. The breakthrough in the case arrived on April 18, 2015, 4 days after Derek Orville's body was discovered. Detective Samuel Torres had spent several days reviewing the footage recovered from the hidden camera, meticulously reconstructing the events leading up to Derek's murder. The evidence narrowed down the suspect to one person who had the motive, opportunity, and means to commit the crime: Janice Orville, Derek's wife. At 45, Janice, a librarian from Mankato, Minnesota, had been a quiet and supportive partner throughout their 20-year marriage. However, the cruise had revealed significant fractures in their relationship. Derek's domineering behavior and insistence on pushing Janice into increasingly uncomfortable sexual situations had deeply affected her. The footage from the camera displayed Janice's escalating distress, especially on the final night of Derek's life. The video showed Derek demanding that Janice engage in a sexual act with Marina Davis while he watched, bound and gagged. Janice's tearful pleas for Derek to stop went unanswered, and the video ended as tensions reached their peak. Torres was convinced that Janice had snapped under the pressure, ultimately suffocating Derek with a pillow while he was helpless. On the morning of April 18th, Torres, accompanied by 2 other officers, went to confront Janice in her cabin. As the sun began to rise, casting a soft glow over the ship cruising through the Caribbean, Janice opened the door. Her face was pale, and her eyes were red from days of sleeplessness. She knew immediately why they were there. Torres informed Janice that she was under arrest for the murder of her husband. She didn't resist. Instead, she nodded quietly, her hands trembling as the officers placed the handcuffs on her. She appeared resigned to her fate, as though the weight of the past week had finally broken her spirit. As she was led away, other passengers watched in stunned silence, the gravity of the situation settling in. Back in Mankato, news of Janice's arrest spread swiftly. The small town, where Derek had been a well-known realtor, was in shock. Friends and family found it hard to reconcile the image of the quiet, unassuming librarian with the severe crime she was accused of committing. Derek's parents were particularly devastated by the news. They had always viewed Janice as the ideal wife for their son, and now they were struggling with the horror of realizing that she had taken his life. The arrest marked the start of a lengthy legal process, but for Torres, it was the culmination of a tense and emotionally charged investigation. He had witnessed firsthand the profound impact the situation had on everyone involved. While Janice's arrest provided some closure, it also left many questions about the true nature of Derek and Janice's relationship and how everything had spiraled so disastrously. Janice Orville's trial commenced on October 12, 2015, in Miami-Dade County Court. The courtroom was filled with reporters, curious onlookers, and the families of both Derek and Janice, all eagerly anticipating the pursuit of justice. The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Maria Paulina Sanchez, was determined to depict Janice as a cold-blooded killer. Sanchez, known for her no-nonsense approach and sharp cross-examinations, argued that Janice had carefully planned Derek's murder as a way to escape their deteriorating marriage. She presented the hidden camera footage as crucial evidence, emphasizing Janice's escalating distress and the final confrontation on the night of the murder. Sanchez asserted that Janice had deliberately suffocated Derek, using the pillow as a murder weapon in a premeditated act of violence. In contrast, the defense, led by public defender Alan Goldstein, painted a very different picture. Goldstein, a seasoned attorney known for his empathetic style, argued that Janice had acted in self-defense after enduring years of psychological abuse. Goldstein portrayed Derek as a controlling and manipulative husband who had coerced Janice into degrading situations. He argued that Janice's actions were the result of a mental breakdown triggered by the intense stress of the cruise and Derek's relentless pressure. Throughout the trial, Janice remained stoic, often keeping her eyes downcast as she listened to the testimony. The Orville family sat in the front row, their grief evident. Derek's mother, Linda Orville, broke down in tears multiple times, struggling to comprehend how the woman she once considered a daughter could have killed her son. After 2 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for just 6 hours before returning with a verdict. On October 27, 2015, Janice Orville was found guilty of second-degree murder. The judge sentenced her to 50 years in prison without the possibility of parole. While the verdict provided some closure for Derek's family, it also left them with an enduring sense of loss. Derek's family felt the sentence was too lenient, considering the brutal nature of his death. Meanwhile, Janice's family expressed relief that she had avoided a life sentence, though they were devastated by the outcome. The trial had been a painful ordeal for all involved, leaving emotional scars that would take years to heal. After the trial, the lives of everyone involved were forever altered. Janice Orville began serving her 50-year sentence at the Lowell Correctional Institution in Ocala, Florida. The transition to life behind bars was a stark and challenging adjustment for Janice, who had spent most of her life in the quiet comfort of her Minnesota home. The once modest librarian now faced a daily reality filled with strict routines, overcrowded cells, and limited contact with the outside world. Janice mostly kept to herself, spending her days reading and occasionally teaching other inmates how to read and write. Meanwhile, back in Mankato, Derek Orville's family struggled to move forward. His parents, Robert and Linda, were consumed by grief, unable to come to terms with the loss of their only son. The house that once resonated with Derek's lively presence now felt unbearably empty. Robert, who had always taken pride in Derek's accomplishments, became a shadow of his former self, rarely leaving the house. Linda sought solace in her church community, finding comfort in prayer and the support of fellow parishioners, but the pain of losing Derek was an ever-present burden. Meanwhile, Ryan Davis and Marina Davis Lockley returned to Long Island after the trial, their lives in disarray. The scandal had not only destroyed their reputation, but also left their marriage in ruins. Ryan, formerly a successful investment banker, lost his job when the company discovered his involvement in the trial and the secret recordings he had made. Marina, once a respected yoga instructor, faced the collapse of her career as clients abandoned her in the aftermath of the scandal. The couple eventually divorced, each struggling to rebuild their lives separately. For the community of Mankato, The case served as a stark reminder of how rapidly life can change. The trial and its aftermath dominated conversations for months as residents grappled with reconciling the Janice they knew with the woman convicted of such a horrific crime.